Chapter 30, 1919. Having been entombed inside after he was crucified, Alfred is resurrected anew. In clothes which are snow white and snow bright, this gate rolls back and he walks on through. This ground shakes, that guard quakes, and his prisoners bid him adieu. The year is 1919. An American mechanic is inventing a pop-up toaster whilst he drinks some tea. A German locksmith is forming a fascist party. And a Cuban sportsman is becoming the first Latino to play in a World Series. In America, some race riots are spreading from town to town. Portugal, the first ever transatlantic flight, is touching down. And in Ireland, some revolutionaries are promoting their theories. Whilst the British massacre some protesters in India, and then ignore their own media, who have lots of queries. The British also ignore Alfred when his sentence is cut short by a magistrate's court, which admits that he should not be in here. Less than 3 years into a 10-year spell, he is discharged from the army as well, and told not to volunteer. The war has passed Alfred by. It has bled European civilization dry, and it has been celebrated with a series of victory parades. 450,000 Germans, mainly children, commoners and civilians, have been killed by Britain's blockades. Tens of millions of soldiers have been tangled, maimed, mutilated and mangled whilst they served in their army's brigades. And millions of conscripts in the armed forces, innocent civilians and innocent horses have died in needless crusades. 31 countries have turned insane, and 71 countries have died in pain because of hepatitis, because of frozen pneumonia, stupephoric catatonia and phlegmy bronchitis. 16,000 countries have faced tribunals and been threatened with funerals because of laws passed down from above. 6,000 countries have been imprisoned in the name of peace and been released after they followed the law of love. 5446 was Alfred's number, but right now someone else has that number, because Alfred is being unfurled. He clutches his release papers, inhales the smoggy vapours, and steps out into this brave new world, with clothes which are baggy, a beard which is shaggy, and hair which is slightly curled. Alfred considers these tubular underground trains, which snake through a big city's veins, to be a miracle beneath the earth. These street traders who carry their knickknacks, and these porters who carry their sacks, fill him with a sense of worth. He is deafened by these double-decker trams, these noisy traffic jams, and this taxi driver who calls, cusses and curses, these motor cars which start to break, these babies who start to shake, and this trombonist who rehearses, these church bells which ring, these singers who sing, and this group of uniformed nurses. These doors, these doors, these doors. He is dazzled by these ladies in short skirts, and these men in bright shirts, as he walks down the stretch of grey pavement. He finds them bright, brilliant and bold, and something to behold, as he fills with utter amazement, as he breathes in this fresh spring air, and arrives in this old town square, where he finds this gathered trio. Here is a suffragist who looks healthy, here is the deserter who looks stealthy, and here is Cleo. She is crying, sobbing, snivelling and sighing, in this dress which is pale yellow. "Woman, why are you crying?" Alfred asks in a voice which is mellow. "Sorry," Cleo begins to reply, cry and bellow. "I'm so very sorry. It's just that the government has taken my man away, and I don't know where they put him. Oh, don't I just look a state? Please don't judge me for it." Cleo does not recognise Alfred after all his time in jail, which made him look pasty, pallid and pale, with skin which is starting to harden. His shoes are battered, blemished and broken, and he looks like he has just awoken, or been at work in a muddy garden. "Please tell me, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Alfred asks, as he points at his bruises. "Where have you put him?" Cleo accuses. "What have you done to him? Why have you done it?" "Cleo, it's me." "Alfred, Alfred, Alfred!" Cleo sings in a joyous rhythm, as she embraces her man for the first time since prison. Now he has finally arisen. "Oh, do forgive me. I'm so very sorry. Are you happy to see me? Have I done good?" "You've been amazing," Alfred says. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate your efforts. I dig you. You're better than unicorns and pixies combined. Peace be with you. Down with the war." The suffragist removes her maid's disguise, wipes her eyes, and looks overjoyed, whilst the deserter, who is still big-headed and bow-legged, starts to look annoyed. "Upon my word, who on earth are you?" he asks as he stares across his road. "What on earth is all this? I ain't never seen nothing like it in my life." "Please, put your fingers here. See my hands. Touch my side," Alfred tells him. "Please, stop your doubting and believe. Please, please, please." So the deserter investigates Alfred's bearded chin and blemished skin, which is still covered in the scars from the smallpox. He investigates the stigmata on Alfred's palms, ankles, armpits and arms, beneath his shirt and beneath his socks. "My friend, my comrade, my leader," he responds as he becomes aware. "Oh, darling child," the suffragist responds with her usual flair. "It sure is good to see you. One does hope you're going on favourably, so to speak, because all your sacrifices have been worth it. Your calls to mutiny have been heeded. British soldiers have mutinied, German sailors have mutinied, and German soldiers have deserted. British soldiers have marched on Parliament, British sailors have marched on Parliament, and European soldiers have turned their guns on their leaders. The German people have revolted, they've established a republic, and the Russian people have revolted too. They've ended the war which you opposed, and delivered the peace which you supported. And the UDC are going great guns too. Their campaign for a League of United Nations is going to bear fruit. They're crushing the gender, nationality and class divides. We're at a tipping point. We're building bridges to a future. Say, Alfred, new legislation has overpowered Dora. We've won back our freedom of speech. We've crushed conscription too. We've defeated the military machine. The green shoots of recovery have begun to sprout. Yes, the 99% think the army won the war. They don't realise how miserable they are because they think they're successful. They don't realise that no one wins a war. That they're dead, orphaned, widowed and injured aren't winners. But there is hope. The times, they are a-changing. People are looking for an alternative to the politics which created this mess. The membership of every socialist group is on the rise, and the Labour Party is set to be elected for the first time too. It's taking over the middle ground. The suffragist pauses, and then she sighs, rolls her eyes, looks down at the ground and up at the skies. "Everything is not rosy, so to speak," she cries. "The slave emancipator, who's only just been released from prison, is protesting against the Treaty of Reparations. He says that it's harsh enough to inspire another war. So we've won the peace, but ensuring it lasts won't be easy. We're neck and neck with the war makers as it stands. Say, they're still horse trading behind closed doors in their smoke-filled rooms." "That's true, they're still hungry for blood," Claire adds with scorn, while she looks forlorn, tense, troubled and torn. "They've already launched another war, fighting in Afghanistan for a third time in under a century. Oh, there's just no rest for the wicked. Oh, I am sorry to speak of it. Look at you, just out of prison for peacemaking, and here I am, talking about war. Please don't think me wrong, but it did need to be said. I am a good girl, deep down, aren't I?" "You're fantastic," Alpha replies. "But surely no one supports the soldiers anymore. Please, not after they caused so many deaths, destroyed so much land, and tore so much of our nation apart. Please, people must have realised that soldiers aren't heroes, and that conchies are, now that we've proved ourselves. Please, people must realise that peace is better than war." Cleo feels so embarrassed that she starts to look harassed as she hangs her head in shame. The deserter shrugs, shivers and sighs, closes his eyes and looks a little bit lame, which leaves the suffragist to explain. "Oh, darling child," she begins to explain. "You've beaten the military, that's for sure, but people will hate you all the more for it. It's the politics of envy, so to speak. Virtue, you see, is persecuted more by the wicked than it is loved by the good. At the end of the day, you've beaten an army which people adore, challenged a government which they respect, and oppose their sons, brothers and lovers. You're in the proverbial toilet. Most job listings are now marked conscientious objectors need not apply. Most families have ostracised their pro-peace relatives. Most conchies have lost their right to vote. There aren't any pensions for crippled conchies, or any maintenance allowances for their widows. You'll be an outcast and a pariah. You'll be despised. You'll be a hero for sure, but no one will say it. Not here on British soil. You'll never get the respect you deserve. Never." "I can accept all of this," Alpha replies. "I'm happy to embrace all the hardships which come my way. Yes. My campaign was fought for humanity, not personal glory. But how can you be so sure? Please tell me. I'd be ever so grateful. I'd be very much obliged." "Well, because one met a few of your comrades from France on one's prison visits," the suffragist explains. "One still writes to some of them. Say, schoolmaster's been searching high and low for work, but no school will employ him, even as a janitor. He could look till the cows come home if you ask me, for all the good it will do him. He's picking fruit for now, whilst the harvest is plentiful and the labourers are few, but he'll be out of work in under a month. The apprentice has also moved to the countryside, to an area where there aren't any other piano tuners, and so the locals have no choice but to hire him. But he's been struggling to keep in touch with his family, and he can't find a wife. No one will marry him, not with his history. One has not heard from a nurse, but rumour has it that he's become a bit of a big hitter, so to speak, healing people using the cloth he wrapped around you in France. It's been said that he's used that shroud to end the siege, deliver men from evil spirits, and heal the terminally ill." The suffragist winks, she blinks, and she lightens the mood with his tale, which makes Cleo wriggle, Alfred giggle, and the deserter flick the shell. "Say, we're at a crossroads, so to speak," the suffragist continues to wail. It's up to us to get Britain moving again. For one always feels that any protest is better than none, and that a life without a cause is a life without effect. So one is still encouraging soldiers to mutiny. And our grassroots membership is cleaning up the warmakers' mess as we speak. The Quakers are sending apostles all across Europe to rebuild villages, purify water supplies, build hospitals and care for starving children. They're sending countries on holidays to lift their spirits and training them so they can find new jobs. The Brotherhood Church is helping countries to recover from their hunger strikes at a commune in the country. And the NCF are campaigning against war, conscription and military training in schools. The fight back continues, and one is proud to be a part of it. As the suffragist finishes this speech, Cleo finishes her peach, and the deserter is overcome by some pessimistic predictions, because he has been working in the greengrocery with rhubarb, radishes and rosemary, and some peacemakers who were sacked for their convictions. The Good German's old store, with unchanged decor, has joined an NCF labour exchange which combats such afflictions. It has also raised money for an NCF kitty to support the families of conscious in the big city, and it hired more staff after rationing was introduced, because shopkeepers had got clubbed and delivery boys had got mugged amidst the panic which that policy had produced. But now Alfred is back, the deserter worries about getting the sack or having his hours reduced. "So what do you plan to do?" he asks Alfred apprehensively. "Please understand," Alfred replies pensively. "I plan to reconcile with the people who I alienated during my pro-peace campaign, because I've come to realise that the more you preach, the less you teach. Yes, thank you. I should have been more embracing. I didn't need to be a warrior for peace. Peace was already in me. The kingdom of God was already in me. The whole universe was already in me. It was above and below me, within and without, to the left and the right. It was before and behind me, in the great and the small, male and female, soldier and country alike. So I plan to reconcile with the White Feather Brigade, the cadets, Bernie and my mother. And I plan to embrace them all. It's a matter of involution and evolution. Yes, thanking you." "But what are you going to do with the shop?" the deserter asks, because he cannot tell if he's employed, which makes him feel annoyed, despondent, downhearted and destroyed. "Please, do you understand me?" Alfred asks, as he clutches his flask, feeling overjoyed. "Yeah, you know that I understand you." "Then tend to my fruit. Please, do you love me?" "Yeah, you know that I love you." "Then tend to my vegetables. Please, do you embrace me?" "Alfred," the deserter replies again, because he finds his questions inane and verging on the insane. "You know all of these things. You know that I embrace you." "Please, guide my customers, shepherd my flock, and manage my shop. Make followers of everyone you meet, wash them in peace, and teach them what I've taught you. I'll be ever so grateful. I'll be very much obliged." Alfred smiles with beauty, balance, and bliss, and gives the deserter a farewell kiss, knowing they will never meet again. He walks past his row of rickety cutters and this row of rickety shutters before he returns to his childhood domain, his workshop which is full of taps, tools, and tapes, saws, sanders, and shapes, chisels, crowns, and chain. He unearths his feathers from beneath his board, under which they have all been stored, throughout days full of sunshine, showers, and snow. Hundreds of barbs jut out from each shaft, thousands of barbules extend with craft, and millions of hooklets still glow. Alfred soaks, softens, and shapes each feather, fills them with blue ink together, then dries them out in the sand. He places his quills in homemade cases, with homemade bases, which he engraves with a steady hand. "The pen is mightier than the sword," he writes in these letters which look artistic, majestic, and grand, before he skips down his winding lanes, past his horses who are dressed in reins, and Miss Belgium who is dressed in brown, past his soldiers who are embarking on military marches, these giant white arches, and Miss Don who is wearing a gown, past his chefs, costermongers, and caretakers, builders, butchers, and bakers, and this freaky-looking clown, these men with their spouses, these workmen's houses, and that tomb which is falling down, before he climbs the tallest hill in his town, where he sees a blonde bombshell who thinks he is a stranger, sat with a Sunday school teacher and the money changer, beneath this leafy tree. They are chattering, nattering, and drinking some tea. "Please tell me, what are you talking about?" Alfred asks him as he walks through some scree. "Oh, honey bunny, aren't you funny?" the blonde bombshell replies as she flutters her eyes and strokes her slender knee. "You must be the only person in town who doesn't know what's happened." The blonde bombshell's beauty has waned with time. Now she is past her prime, with blue veins all over her face, with cheeks which are blue, as if she has the flu, with a neck in a cervical brace. "What are you talking about?" Alfred cuts to the chase. "Please tell me. Please. What are we talking about?" talking about? The money changer replies as she swats these flies and ties a brown shoelace. What about the conscientious objectors, of course? They claim to be prophets of peace. Oh, peace! Our leaders sentenced them to death and crucified them for it. But we heard they'd been released from jail this morning, so we went to see for ourselves. And, lo and behold, there wasn't a single Conchi there. It's a disgrace. It doesn't do. It just doesn't do. They should have all been shot. Alfred sits down with his girls, who are wearing fake pearls, and he starts to commune. He talks with tranquility and humility until the sun is usurped by the moon. When his Sunday school teacher continues on with her foot shuffling, hair ruffling, and bottom shaking, her flirtatious winking, unconscious blinking, and dimple making. Stay with us tonight, sweetheart, she says as her heart starts quaking. It is getting late, my love. Thank you, Alfred replies as he looks out of his town, takes his bread down, and shares it all around. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I do respect your white feather campaign. You did what you considered was right. It was a good effort. Way to go. Your efforts deserve recognition. The peacemakers did what they thought was right too. So we're not so different. We're the same. Yes, thank you. Although I did let my emotions overpower my spirit, and my heart overpower my soul. I am sorry for that. Sorry. I do understand, love, and embrace you now. Alfred stands up to leave, touches the money changer's sleeve, and wins over his lady's heart. He puts 3 feathers onto his bench, which is near that trench, and reveals his identity as he departs. I feel like there's a fire ablaze within me. I'm in love. The Sunday school teacher volunteers, as she falls for Alfred after all these years, near some horses who are pulling their carts. She starts to cry as Alfred walks downwards, walks onwards, and walks into this old church hall, where he crosses his boards and holds 7 cords in front of his painted wall. The retired captain leads this cadet meeting, near the seating where his money changers count their gold, whilst his children get groomed for war in this military corps where they do whatever they are told. Bathed in shiny white light, Alfred ascends to his height from where he spoke out once before. His merchants turn his way, and those cadets begin to sway on that shiny floor. Their hearts stop, their bodies freeze, and their stomachs drop. They cry, clamour, and call. They recall Alfred's last speech in here, so they flee in fear, flop, faint, and fall. What-o? Surely this is a spirit! The retired captain begins to drawl. This man was crucified! For our country! For our country! Oh, boo-hoo! Boo-hoo-hoo! He can't have risen from the dead! What a pickle! Golly-o! Alfred walks across his tiles, smiles, and puts his rope on top of his chest. He nods keenly, smiles serenely, and looks like he has been blessed. His breath travels from bronchiole to bronchi to larynx, up through his pharynx, and all the way out through his nose. He is held, heeded and heard, without adding a word, or trying to impose. So he walks out of this greystone church, leaves the retired captain in the lurch, and ends his belligerent reign, whilst his cadets run in many ways, with their hearts ablaze, alight, afire, and aflame. Alfred walks past his mansions, which are surrounded by vines, his apartments, which are surrounded by pines, and his schoolgirls, who all have the giggles. He walks past his houses, which are rather tall, his cottages, which are rather small, and his billboard, which is covered in wiggles, his hut, which is painted black, his ramshackle shack, and his shop front, which is covered in squiggles, before he enters his home, where Cleo is alone, with a curious case of the wriggles. Oh, I am sorry to say it, she says, while she jiggles, but I just don't get all this reconciliation malarkey. Whatever happened to live by the sword, die by the sword? Oh, I am terrible, but I just don't get it. Does that make me bad? I am a good girl, really, aren't I? You're perfect, Alfred replies, but please, too many people have already died by the sword. It's time to start living. You see, there was once a maid whose mistress was a perfect boss, but then again, she had no reason not to be. She had everything she ever wanted, and her maid did whatever she was told. So the maid tested her mistress to see if she was truly kind by arriving late one morning. Well, her mistress flew into a mighty rage and beat the maid. The maid turned up late the next day too, and the mistress beat her again. The mistress beat her every day that week, because whilst her mistress's actions had always been kind, her being had never been pure. No, thank you. And I was much the same. Performed many good deeds when I was younger, gave many gifts to poor children at Christmas time. They were really kind actions, but they only had a limited effect on my being. I did them because I had no reason not to. When I made a gift for a temperamental soldier, it was only because I wanted him to send a postcard home. It was selfish. But last year, when I made gifts for my jailer, I did evolve my soul. I understood, loved, and embraced my jailer, even though he slandered me and put me in solitary confinement. I understood love and embraced him without ever wanting anything in return, which helped me to become a better person. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, thank you. I embraced myself, our society, and our universe. I embraced the war makers as part of my very own being, and it helped me to rise. It helped me to transcend this world of suffering and pain. But it also helped me to see that I told people to love their enemies, the Germans, without ever following my own advice. I never loved my own enemies, the war makers, and for that I'm now making amends. Alfred takes some brimstone and treacle before he shaves, before he bathes, and before he falls asleep tonight, before he goes to see Bernie, feeling bright, bouncy and breezy, with a joyous sort of delight. He walks past this gardener who carries a rake, this gypsy who charms a snake, and that unshaven tiller, this large group of suited solicitors, this small group of Belgium exhibitors, and that lonesome distiller, before he arrives at his restaurant where Bernie is sat near a plant, a fish tank and a pillar. Bernie works for a firm which employed him before. Now he is a hero of war and an archetypal soldier. Now that he has become a sergeant and feels resurgent with 3 chevrons on either shoulder. He has a fiancée he desired and found it easy to get hired. Now he is 5 years older. Good God, man, he says as he closes his folder. You don't have to explain yourself to me. Not really. No, not at all. I only asked you to follow orders for your own good. We'll always be friends. Alfred and Bernie, friends forever. ABC. That's just it, Alfred replies. We shouldn't let silly things like wars get between us. Please. I'm sorry for the way I spoke to you when I enlisted. I should have embraced your decision to fight. I understand love and embrace you now. What a fabulous person you are. My mother always said I should be more like you. I'm so happy to see that you're happy. These friends talk as if they had never been separated, which makes time feel accelerated, whilst they slurp their soup and chew their tart. Whilst Bernie talks about France without revision, and Alfred talks about his time in prison, all his soul and all his heart. Please tell me, what happened to the coward? Alfred asks as they depart. He became introverted at first, Bernie replies and cries because this question tears him apart. I think he must have gone mad. Bonkers. Doolally. Cuckoo. He didn't speak for days, and, in the end, he just couldn't hack it anymore. I've sinned, he shouted. I betrayed innocent blood. I blow, man. No one cared much for what the coward thought. What's that to us, you low-life pawn? The commanding officer taunted. That's your responsibility, and fault, and burden, not ours. And so the coward threw down his 30 silver francs and stormed off. It was awfully rum. We didn't have an earthly what he was doing until we found his corpse hanging from a tree in an empty field. Good God, man, the silly little boy had only gone and hung himself. The army used the silver pieces to buy that field and turned it into a mass grave for foreigners, deserters and civilians, which they call the Field of Blood. Oh gosh, I'd like to visit that field, to pay my respects. Yes, please. Please, 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 Alfred says. For sure, man. I'll show you where it is, Ben replies, before they go their separate ways. Before Alfred goes to his childhood home, where he sees his comb and his biscuits which are slightly stale, this photograph which is faded, this painting which is jaded, and this pile of yesterday's mail. And he sees his mother, who has become so thin, with wrinkled fingers and wrinkled skin, that she looks a little bit weird. Her clothes are fraying, her hair is greying, and she has started to sprout a beard. Her spine shoots her back in awe as Alfred walks through the door with his look of peaceful serenity. It swirls her around with dread and wobbles her head as she questions her own identity. So Alfred pours her some water to drink, gives her time to think, and acts with peaceful tranquillity. He acts with peaceful care, peaceful flair, and peaceful civility. You've brought shame upon me, this family, and this nation, his mother says with hostility. Somewhere, somewhen, somehow, you have. Look at me. How dare you show your face in here, Alfred Freeman? You're a disgrace, and every damn fool knows it. My little soldier, you're just not respectable. I know, Alfred confesses. I know that I've hurt you. In life, you often hurt the people who love you the most. It's a tragedy in which I played a leading role, and so I've come to apologise. I am sorry. Please understand. Please, please, please. With a smile on his clean-shaven face, Alfred looks around this place and sees the memories which live on in this room. He sees a time when his stepfather was introduced, the silence that moment produced, and his aunts who were doused in perfume. He sees a time when his father died, when his mother cried, and when she donned his father's costume. Please tell me, Alfred asks as he sits down near this tape, this drape, and that broom. Do you know why gladiatorial fights were abolished in ancient Rome? Alfred's mother is overcome with breathless distress and breathless stress, so she is unable to reply. She starts to shake, quake, quiver, and cry. It happened after an ascetic jumped into the arena, Alfred explains, whilst his mother strains and clutches her wrinkled thigh. The ascetic walked across the Colosseum, past many gladiators and some chariots too. Tens of thousands of Romans watched on from their stands as the ascetic marched up to Caesar. Please, just imagine it. The ascetic looked a complete wreck compared to that magnificent leader. But he was brave. Yes, thank you. He told Caesar that killing people for sport was barbaric. He told Caesar to end it there and then. Once he finished speaking, the crowd threw rocks at the ascetic. They were offended by the way that moral upstart had challenged their culture. And beneath that storm of stones, a lion approached the ascetic and ate him whole. The ascetic died in an instant, but as a result of his sacrifice, no one was ever killed in that arena again. No thank you. So his actions, which were so unpopular at the time, saved countless lives. Well, when I refused to be a soldier, I was happy to be rejected by society too. I was happy to be eaten by the lion of war. Like the ascetic, I believe my sacrifice would inspire a newfound respect for human life. And like him, I can see that I'm dead to you now. And I can accept that, because I understand, love and embrace you, Mother. I really do. There isn't a single thing about you which I don't like. There's not a single thing about you which I'd change. Not one. I'm grateful for everything you've ever done for me. Yes, yes, yes. Alfred smiles as he removes his homemade wooden box, places it down by those wooden clocks, that cotton sock and that leather shoe, so that like the private in the Admiral's book, he has proved that he is not a coward, caitiff or crook, and returns his 4 feathers too. I plan to leave this country, he says with his arms askew. I plan to follow in the steps of a good German, through involution and evolution. By the descent of spirit into matter and the ascent of matter into spirit, I shall rest. I shall find shelter in the hills, surrounded by bubbling springs and blossoming orchards. Please come with me, Mother. Pretty please with a cherry on top. Alfred lifts his hands to bless his mother, to show her that he loves her, before he gives her his gentle kiss. He acts with peaceful tranquillity, peaceful humility, and peaceful bliss. Never! His mother begins to huff, rebuff, and dismiss. Look at me! I'll never come with you! I'll never be like you! And I'll never want to see you again! My notion! There's just nothing to be done with you, Alfred Freeman! Your family hates you, your country hates you, and I hate you too! Don't you ever come hither again! You and your Mrs. D will never be welcome here! So ends this story about understanding overcoming compulsion, love overcoming revulsion, and oneness overcoming abuse. A story about the rare sort of kind geniality and brave morality which you all possess but seldom use. For detractors have been defeated, challenges have been completed, and principles have been proclaimed. Acts of persecution and threats of execution have all been constrained. This is the end of Alfred Freeman's story, the end of a life full of glory, and the end of Alfred himself, because Alfred is about to depart with a peaceful heart and perfect health. You'll never be welcome here. There, that is all, his mother says as the spine thrusts her into that shelf. I understand, Alfred replies with peaceful tranquillity. I love you, he says with peaceful humility. I am you, he says with civility. He walks outwards, walks onwards, and walks free. Thank you for listening to my book, Involution and Evolution. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you'd like to find out more about me and my writing, please follow me on Twitter at Joss Sheldon, on Facebook, facebook.com/Joss Sheldon, or visit my website www.joss-sheldon.com.